Breaking news, Diddy has moved
Breaking news.
for a mistrial. The defense is alleging that what the prosecution just did is so prejudicial to his case that they have to stop the trial, that they must conclude the trial because what the prosecution just did is so prejudicial to his case that there's no way that this jury can give him a fair trial.
I told you, so many of your online commenters have ruled this case with so much bias and, you know, in their reporting, they're telling you exactly what they want to hear. All these gossip tubers. I don't know why so many gossip people that have been attracted to this case, other than the fact that it's Diddy and he's one of the most famous people of this hip hop era. But I always look out for people who are impartial and how they are viewing this. Because this case is far from over, and it may not end like a lot of y'all want it to end. This is attorney Simone Redwine. Attorney Simone Redwine is reporting live from the Diddy trial, and she is about to tell you about how this motion for mistrial today came about.
Literally ran out of the courtroom to give you this live update. Breaking news, Diddy has moved for a mistrial. He has moved for a mistrial. I'm gonna explain it to you. Come on in here. I want you to come in and let us know where you're viewing from. But here's the tea. So the witness was the arson investigator, okay? It was the arson investigator, Mr. Jimenez. He's taking the stand and he's testifying as to the arson, what he knows, what he understands, blah, blah, blah. Well, the defense yesterday made a big old stink about certain things. Now, I'm gonna tell you, the reason for the mistrial they're moving for is for prosecutorial misconduct. In other words, they are saying that what the prosecution has just done is so prejudicial to their case.
Yes.
That there is no way for Diddy to get a fair trial going forward. That's right.
And that is the most important thing about what she's trying to tell us here. Is there a realm where Diddy can get a fair trial? This is what I mentioned in my video previous. Is there a place now that Diddy can get a fair trial in this? Is there anywhere where they don't know who Diddy is? They can only look at the case and all the facts that are put before them. I think even without him getting a fair trial, that there are still enough people that will have a reasonable doubt enough. The most important people here are the 12 jurors. Despite what anybody is saying online or on traditional television, right? Those are the most important people. And knock it off with all the people who, as soon as you even raise a question of the fact that Diddy might get off, that want to villainize you and make you into some type of person that abuses people, or you're just like Diddy. You know, like, this needs to stop, because we can't have a good conversation. We can't have a fair judicial system in which we've seen plenty of black men railroaded. Several come to mind on this RICO charge. We can't have a fair judicial system if we're just going to jump to the fact that anybody who is at least thinking logically and raises some concern, like this young lady, is automatically in Diddy's corner. I have no doubt in my mind Diddy is a heinous figure, right? But it still doesn't mean he should be railroaded.
The defense is alleging that what the prosecution just did is so prejudicial to his case that they have to stop the trial, that they must conclude the trial because what the prosecution just did is so prejudicial to his case that there's no way that this jury can give him a fair trial. The detective is Detective Lance Jimenez. He's the arson investigator. So yesterday, before this testimony started, the defense filed a motion that they wanted to be able to basically talk about the DNA that was discovered on some of the collected evidence, the bottle, remember? Yeah. So in prior testimony, when I believe it was Kate Cuddy was on the stand, Brian Still said, hey, were you informed that female DNA was found on the bottle? And he was like, no. And the prosecutor was like, objection, blah, blah, blah. There was a whole motion about it. And ultimately, what the defense wants to get into evidence is the fact that there was female DNA on the bottle. Now, the prosecution's position is if they want to get that in, that's one thing, but that this detective, Jimenez, wouldn't be the appropriate person to do it because he is not the one that did the DNA testing. He doesn't do DNA.
Boom. He's not even the one. The guy that they're bringing up there isn't even the one that did the testing on the bottle. He isn't involved in the case in any way. He's a witness there. So now they're bringing this guy up who's totally unrelated to the thing, and somehow he's an expert witness on this. This is what I'm saying. Like, a lot of these charges that they're saying, you know, I've heard several YouTubers say, oh, they've only got to prove 2 for a RICO. He definitely did the arson. He definitely did the kidnapping. All these things have not been proven. You could say what you want about Diddy, but he has a lot of things where you can't be tied back to him. And like the police, even LAPD did not investigate Diddy at all for this crime, even though it's a conclusion that a lot of YouTubers and others have made that these are crimes that Diddy actually committed for sure. These are not facts. So anybody that's telling you that they are and that this is a slam dunk and this case is over, you seriously need to check and see who they are. This right here is an attorney. And like I said, she's not pro Diddy or pro the feds. She's being impartial. And that is the only thing I'm asking for in this case and for the people that cover it going forward.
This detective, Jimenez, wouldn't be the appropriate person to do it because he is not the one that did the DNA testing. He doesn't do DNA testing. That's not his thing. He's just an arson investigator. And other people did the testing, and then he used the results and made his report. So as an attorney, I'll tell you, the appropriate way is if the question is about DNA, then you do want to have the person that tested the DNA up here. Shout out to my girl, Janice.
Where's that person at? That's a great question right now. Where is that person at? And Attorney Simone gives a very good reason as to why they do not have that person testifying right now.
So you don't get an arson investigator to testify about the DNA that was there, that wasn't there, blah, 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 because they simply don't know. Specifically, part of the issue here is there was partial female DNA. So the question becomes, was there other DNA? Is that the only DNA? How reliable is that DNA sample? Blah, 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 blah. This investigator can't speak to any of that because he doesn't know about that.
He doesn't know.
It's kind of like you can't ask a cop about a fire. You would want to go ask the firefighter, you know, who did that aspect of the fire. Kind of like that is the concept. So the judge ruled that yes, in fact, the defense, when they cross-examine him, can ask him questions about the female DNA that was obtained on the bottle. Judge said that's fine. So in preparation for that, on direct, which is where the prosecution is asking him the questions, they asked him questions about fingerprints and what other evidence was collected. So they said, as far as evidence, there was the bottle. Y'all, it was an MD 4040. It was a Mad Dog 4040 bottle. So that's how I know it was probably one of Diddy's security guards that set that Molotov cocktail because they used Old English. That's what it was. They used Old English malt liquor bottle. Yeah.
But that's not a fact. You don't know that. Could have been the most convenient thing around. I know a lot of people you wouldn't expect that drink Old English 40s.
You know.
And unless his security is from LA, they probably don't know nothing about Old English. OE.
That was an old security guard. So again, what I'm explaining, y'all, is live from the courthouse. I'm explaining how Diddy just filed for a mistrial, meaning that would terminate this trial. They would either have to retry him or start all over. But he filed for a mistrial because he...
And see, that's important. They would have to retry him or start all over. That's what the prosecution wants to avoid. That's what everybody that's commenting on this wants to avoid. They want to put him in jail for life on a lot of this stuff that is very circumstantial, very questionable in whether or not it is his. And that's why I think it needs to be taken seriously, because this 20 years, anything over 20 years is Diddy's life. That's a life sentence. So if we're going to just go ahead and throw Diddy in jail and throw away the key, then we're really looking at a system that is not set up for fairness. It's pretty much what they did to Bill Cosby. Let's be honest. I hate to put a conspiracy theory hat on, but Diddy did win a rather large lawsuit for racial discrimination against Diageo. And after that, shortly thereafter, this happened. I mean, it was like right on top of it too. So I'm wondering if the two are related. Why now has Diddy been able to practice what he's been practicing for the last 20 years? Whatever you think of for what the last 30 years, for whatever you think of freak offs or whatever else he's been doing. Why has he been allowed to do this for this long? And now all of a sudden, he's going to be sent to jail for life. Begs the question, what is different here in this moment? That's what we need to ask.
Claiming that what the prosecution just did, and I'm going to go back to explain it, what the prosecution just did with the arson investigator on the stand was so prejudicial to his case that there is no way this jury can give him a fair trial. In other words, he's trying to get this case terminated, this trial terminated, and they're either going to have to start all over or they're going to have to drop the charges, either one. And here's why. Arson investigator is on the stand. And the prosecution is asking the arson investigator, all right, when you collected evidence, what was it? He says, MD, Old English malt liquor bottle was the Molotov bottle. He also got a lighter. And they said, what about fingerprints?
This was a terrible Molotov cocktail, by the way. The car did not explode, despite what the reports you might hear. It was ruined. Kid Cudi said it was totaled, but this car was burned interiorly. Like, it wasn't even like... It wasn't a huge, like, Diddy's blowing up these cars in front of people's houses. Now, this is what I'm also going to say. Can they say that that specific crime was something that Diddy committed, that Diddy put the bottle in? The closest thing they have to that is Capricorn Clark yesterday testifying that she was called to go over to the house when Diddy was into it with Kid Cudi. Capricorn Clark is the same person who had all this stuff happen to her. And while she's being kidnapped and asked to do a lie detector test for 5 days, funny, she was let go every day in the 5 days. She calls Lauren London and she calls Cassie on her burner phone. I got a question. Why didn't you call the police? Call the police. Well, every day you showing up to work, they're taking you to an abandoned warehouse and giving you a lie detector test and then letting you go and then asking you to come back and do the same thing. This is what I'm saying. A lot of people, and I listened to another attorney online here who said that Capricorn Clark came off a little insincere in her tears on the stand because she was able to cry on cue and immediately dry up the tears and start laughing and joking about stuff. You know, now you could say whatever you want to say about that, but as somebody who I'm assuming probably has been in a courtroom for a large part of their life, they noticed that something was off in that, and that's why they mentioned it.
I said, yeah, we collected 2 fingerprints. I said, okay. And then they were never able, and then she says, all right, and did you test the fingerprints? He's like, no. And then she was like, why didn't you test the fingerprints? He was like, well, they were destroyed. And she said, well, when...
What other cases coming out of LA have we heard of where evidence was miraculously destroyed? I can think of a couple bullet fragments that just went missing in Los Angeles. As someone who's lived in Los Angeles for quite a while, doesn't surprise me that that can happen. But now they're saying the evidence in this Diddy trial somehow disappears. And you're going to laugh when you hear what they're saying the reason is for it disappearing and how it conveniently fits the prosecution's case. I don't think there's any way Diddy can get a fair trial here.
Was that, he says, August of 2012, they were destroyed. And she was like, well, is that normal? Is that unusual? And the defense goes, objection. And she said, okay, well, in your 15 years of experience as an arson investigator, has it ever happened? Because remember, the incident happened in January. This very, very important evidence was magically destroyed in August. So she wanted to say, in your 15 years of experience, has it ever happened that this has disappeared. So I'm over here as a lawyer. I'm like, ooh, girl, get him. Ooh, girl, get it. Because I'm like, we need some better arson evidence, y'all. We need some stronger arson evidence.
Right.
Hit that like as you join. So I'm really thinking in my notes, I'm like, surely there's stronger arson evidence. She's asking this line of questioning, right? So the two questions she asked were, was it unusual to you that the fingerprints that you collected mysteriously disappeared before the investigation was closed? So it happened in January, they disappeared in August. And he didn't get to answer. They objected, the judge sustained the objection, which meant he wasn't allowed to answer. So then she says, okay, so she rephrases it. She says, in your 15 years of experience, has that ever happened before? And they say, object, and they have a sidebar. Well, they take the jury out. That is when it was very clear to me that, oh shoot, defense is probably gonna ask for a mistrial. The reason the defense gave is they are saying that basically the implication from the prosecutor was that the reason that the fingerprints came up missing is Diddy must have done something. He must have made it go away.
Right, because they've already classified Diddy as some type of supervillain. Diddy is Lex Luthor in a lot of these people's minds. And so far, the only thing they've proven is that he is an abuser and that he likes to have freaky parties, S parties. I forget it sometimes I'm on YouTube. I got to say S parties. Sorry. She's really good at it. She remembers all the time.
That the fingerprints came up missing is Diddy must have done something. He must have made it go away. And the prosecution is like, oh, no, that's not where we were going, Your Honor. We know that they're going to try to tear up on cross-examination the credibility of this investigator. They're going to try to say he didn't do a good job, it wasn't a good investigation, it was sloppy, blah, blah, blah. So in preparation, we wanted to basically take away the surprise to allow him to explain why fingerprints were not compared and that the reason was innocuous, which is that they weren't compared because they were destroyed. Thank you, Christy Collier, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Hit that like, y'all. Hit that subscribe as you come in. So the prosecutor's like, no, there's no bad inference. And the defense is basically like, BS. BS, Your Honor, because in jury selection alone, they said during jury selection, part of their challenge at selecting jurors is that jurors stated that some of them believed that because of how powerful and rich Diddy was, that he could pay to handle crime. Like, he could pay to make stuff go away. Literally, that was one of the things it said.
They think Diddy is Al Capone.
There was a suggestion brought up that it was possible for Diddy, that it was possible for that Combs could buy his way out of this. Quote, buy his way out of this crime. So the defense is saying, y'all know we had this problem before day one of testimony. Before day one of testimony, selecting a jury, we had difficulty because jurors, before they even heard anything, were like, Diddy could buy his way out of it. So for the prosecutors to play into that stereotype that, oh, this evidence went missing.
Because
and
Diddy.
Perhaps, they didn't say it,
right,
but perhaps it has something to do with Diddy and Diddy making it go away. They're saying that is so prejudicial to the jurors that they need a mistrial. They need a mistrial. So here's what the judge, so they went to the side and they talked and they got to arguing back and forth. So, but here's the thing. The judge says, well, listen, you objected and I sustained both objections. In other words, questions were asked, they said objection, nobody got to answer. The two questions that were at issue that really just caused the hubbub was the first question was it unusual that these fingerprints came up missing in August and this happened in January? Was it unusual that this happened? And they said objection, oh boy didn't get to answer, right? Detective didn't get to answer. So then she says, okay, Your Honor, I'll rephrase. She says, in your 15 years of experience, she didn't even get to finish the question, y'all. The defense says, Your Honor, objection, can we have a sidebar? In the end, what the judge said is, listen, the questions were never answered. The questions were raised, but they weren't answered.
Right.
So the judge was like, so why can't I just instruct the jury to strike the testimony, ignore the testimony, and even go a step further with ensuring that testimony won't be on the transcript, any transcript that would be provided to the jury. So,
but if you have to do all that, and the judge has already acknowledged that the jury has heard something that would put into their mind that Diddy is capable of changing things in this way, tampering in this way. That he has that much control of what the LAPD does. The LAPD, do you know who that is? But it's already there. So that's a huge misstep on the prosecution's behalf. And like I said, I don't think you can unring it. So now the judge is actually bending over backwards now trying to help out the prosecution because they've mentioned this and they put it in this light. And they've mentioned that from the beginning, from jury selection. So this is something they know about. Is it possible for this man to get a fair trial here and not have the jury be prejudiced?
That because what happens is sometimes as lawyers on purpose, we will ask a question because we just want to put that in the mind of the juror, right? What it's called is you can't unring the bell. The defense said, hey, The defense was like, no, Your Honor, they cannot unring the bell. They said at this point, the jury is going to be left with surmising or wondering if Diddy himself made them fingerprints go away. Mind you, when I'm hearing all this, I'm like, oh, at first I was like, well, surely, because, the arson evidence, like if you already don't like Diddy, the arson evidence is sufficient for you to be like, yeah, he did that.
Right.
But if you're coming in neutral, I don't believe that arson evidence would make all 12 of them find him guilty of arson beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly. And that's all we're saying. Anytime you hear somebody that's just like, oh, yeah, he's definitely guilty of arson. Like I said, some YouTuber in particular who got a lot of views on their video. So people just assume that they're right. But anytime that you say that, oh, well, he's already got the arson, he's already got the kidnapping, he's already got this, he's already got that. None of that stuff. None of that stuff. As it stands now, is going to stick. In fact, that's what I'm saying. It's either going to be hung jury or mistrial. And Brian Steele, if we know one thing about Brian Steele from the Young Thug case, is that Brian Steele is going to raise mistrial every time he believes. Every day there's going to be a motion for a mistrial. And I think that's where it is right now. So shout out to Simone Redwine. She is very informative. Go follow her channel. Her channel is actually called Excellent Content Creator and Actual Attorney. Her channel is called Attorney Simone. Girl, is that legal? Girl, is that legal? Go follow her channel. She's going to be giving you updates. I don't think she's going to be at the case too long, but it's good to have somebody that, like I said, isn't as biased, And like you seeing some people that are super biased that are getting 10 times the views she's getting, and she's calling it straight down the middle. So go check her out. Anyway, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification for all uploads. If you want to watch more, please watch one of these videos down below. This is Faucette Media.